Hi, this is Shubham, and in this video, we will continue with our previous lecture. In our previous lecture, we have learned about the pivot tables, pivot chart, how to create a pivot table. But in this lecture, let us move to the next tips and tricks regarding the pivot tables. So let me quickly select the data. I will click create a new pivot table, and now this time, let me drag the month field into the rows area and the sales into the values, right? Now you can see the month-wise sales in this particular pivot table, right? And what if we want to change this numbers of a different calculation? For example, we don't want we want average or we want number of transaction. So that is very easy. I will just drag and drop the sales field again 2 times in the pivot. And in the second column, we are required to get the averages because we want to analyze average wise as well. So it is very easy. Right click anywhere on the second column from this contextual menu. Click on the third last option that is called value field settings, and instead of some click on average. So you will get an average of each other month for the sales, right? And in this third column, if you want a number of projection, that is a count. So right click on it, go to value field settings, or instead of some click on count. So now in one particular time, we can see three different numbers in three different columns. The first one represent month-wise sales, right? The second one averages, and the third one is number of transactions. You can also rename the headers because this would not look like a very neat and clean header. So we can just rename it. These are averages, these are count, or you can say transaction, and this is total, right? Okay, there is one more technique is here. That is, for example, if I want to rename this column as customer. So for example, if I want to rename this column as customer, that is, there is a warning. It shows you here, a message here, that pivot table field name already exists. So what does this mean? So whatever the names available in the field list, you cannot give a name to that particular column. So there is a limitation. So any of the name which is available here in the right side field list, you cannot give the same name to any header of that particular column. But we can also do some technique here if we want. Still, we want to give the name of this column as a customer. So I can write customer and I will add one space here. And that will definitely will accept it because this customer on the right side field list has no extra spaces, whereas definitely you can assume that the space would not be seen by the naked eyes. So we have just given the exactly the same name available in the pivot, but with different techniques of adding a space into it. Alright. Next technique of our tips and tricks you can see about the pivot is, for example, if I drag all the dates into the rows and sales USD into the values, now you can see that because I am using the latest version here, so this is already in a grouping. But if you are using the older version like Excel to 2010 or 2013, so by default it will give you a look just like this. So because I have dragged the order dates and there are so many dates in the data set, and according to that sales here. So if you want to convert your date-wise data into months, into quarters, into years, so you are not required to create a complex formula function. The pivot tables has a built-in functionality to group that particular data into different dimensions. So this is very easy. What you can do is right click on any date, and in this contextual menu, you will find an option that is called group. So when you click on group, a window will appear here and that automatically detects the starting point and the ending point of dates, minimum and maximum date. And we are just required to click on any of the dimension with respect to the time. So if you want to convert this date-wise data into month and also into the quarters, so I have selected month and quarters and I will press OK. So in one click, you can see that your data has been transformed into different dimensions with respect to time, date and time. So you have got the quarter-wise balances, you have got the month-wise balances as well, right? You can also change this as well. Later on, for example, I will again right-click on any of that particular cell. I will go to group, and this time I will just want quarters and years. So I will click on quarters and years. So I will press OK and see that without any formula, your data has been transformed into different dimensions, that is year-wise and quarter-wise, right? So that is very easy. One more thing is that you will not find a word of weekly here. So for example, if your requirement is to make a dimension of a weekly, so what you can do is click on days, and from here in the number of days, just write 7 and press OK. So you will find a different kind of slabs of 7 days. So now your data has been converted into a weekly basis. Okay. So this is very super cool feature of Microsoft Excel pivot tables. You can convert your data into different dimension, right? All right. So moving towards the next tips and tricks, let me create one more new pivot table, and this time I will show you some more good calculations available in pivot without any formula. So what I will do is I will drag the month in the rows and send the USD in the values, right? And we will do some calculations here. We will create two different kinds of calculations here. So if I want to add 2 times more sales column in the pivot, so I have just drag and drop the pivot, that particular field of sales into this pivot table. And now in these two columns, I will create different calculations. So in the first column, I would like to have a calculation of a difference. For example, I want to have a calculation current month minus previous month. So how to do that? So that my column gives me a number of difference. Either the variance would be in a positive or a negative, because we will be subtracting the current month amount from the previous month amount. So how we are going to do that in pivots? That is very easy. You have to right click on that particular column you want, and then you have to click on value field settings. So the value field settings window will appear on the second tab, that is called show values. As click on that, and definitely there is no calculation. So we are required to select the calculation from this drop down value, and from here we will select difference from. Okay. And when you click on difference from, you will find a column that is called base item. So here you are required to click on previous. So when you click on previous, your entire column gets a calculation of current month minus previous month. If you select any other month, for example July, so each month will subtract from the base month that is called July. So there are different kinds of situations can come. But in this example, the base item would be previous, so that every current month gets subtracted from the previous month. When I will press OK, so you will get that a column which gives you a variance either in positive or negative, right? And if you want to have negative numbers to be shown with the red color and with brown brackets as we do in financial reports, so that is very easy. Again, right click, go to value field settings, click on number format, which is in the bottom left side of the window. So when you click on number format, you will find a format sales window here. Go to number and select the format you want. If you don't want any decimals, make it 0. Select the red color with the round brackets and press OK. So now you can see that we have got a column. So we have got a calculation column which is based on current month minus previous month, right? The next calculation we will do in the third column, that is called the running total. How to create a running total. So the running total means if I am spending on the month of February, this means that all the previous month will get added in that particular column. So if I am on in April, so the balance of April with respect to all the previous months, Jan, Feb, and March would get together, and this will create a running total. Okay. So how to create a running total column? Right click, go to value field settings, click on show values as, and from this drop down menu, click on running total in. Okay. And then press OK. So now you will get all the balances month-wise, which are the running total, and you can see that in the month of December, the running total is exactly the same for the same of the sum of sales, right? So this is how we can verify the number that these running totals are exactly correct, right? Let me change the heading as well. So I showed you two different kind of calculation which are available in Pivot. There are many more calculations available. After the video, you can go to this feature and you can explore by your own. And there are some fantastic built-in calculations available. So I hope that will give you a benefit in future when you will create reports or pivots. Okay. So let's come to the next technique of our trick regarding the pivot table. So for example, let me just copy some of the data and paste it on a new sheet. So here in this particular sheet, you will find a small data, and I would like to make a pivot of this particular data. So what I will just select that entire data set. I will go to insert tab and I will click on pivot table. Okay. And let me quickly drag and drop the field, for example, product and the sum of that particular product. So what happens is later on the weekly basis or a monthly basis, your data gets increased, your data gets appended. So for example, if a new transaction comes in next week or next day or next month, whatever the time is, so a new transaction comes out, for example, 1 million, and when you go back to the your previous pivot and you will right click and click on refresh, that number is not getting updated. So this is the limitation. And what you are required to do is whenever in the scenario where you have data is increasing with the passage of time and when you want your pivot to be updated. So what you can do is you have to go to Analyze tab and click on Change Data Source, right? So here you have to manually increase the range. So every time when your data gets appended, you are required to go to Change Data Source option available in the Analyze step, and you are required to increase the range because now we have more transaction in our data. And when you press OK, so now you can see that your number of sales has been updated. Now I don't want to do it again and again. This is a step because I know that on a weekly basis, my data will get increased with the passage of time, and I don't want every time to my pivot to go to manually on change data source. Now, how to control that? So let me give you a quick tip of that. Once you have the data, before creating a pivot table, convert that range into the table format, and that table will give you a flexibility of not manually updating the change data source. So when you convert your normal range into the table format, it converts into a structured reference. And definitely with the passage of time, with more transaction gets added into your data, you are not required to change data source again and again. So let me show you quickly. Select the data, go to insert, and don't create pivot table at the start. First convert this range into the table. So I will click on the table and I will press OK, right? So once your normal range has been converted into the table format, now you will go to insert tab and click on pivot table and create a pivot table. Now let me quickly drag and drop the fields right. So now you can see that there is one product of soft drinks and we have 1.2 million of sales. Now, for example, later on, if there is one more transaction added to your data, let's make it 2 million. And let's get back to the pivot. So now I know that my data has been increased and I want to refresh the pivot. So I will right click on it and I will click on refresh. So you can see that your number is now being updated instead of going to analyze and then going to change data source every time. So now you explore that if your normal data is converted into a range or table format, you are n- no longer required to use this option. You are just required to refresh and your numbers get updated. Right? So I hope you like this technique as well, right? All right, so let me create one more pivot table and let me show you some of the built-in features available in pivot table. So I will just drag and drop the products into the pivot, and then also one more field of salesperson. I want to see the sales year wise, and so I will drag year into the columns, and definitely the last is we want the number. So I will drag and drop the sales into the pivot. So you can see that how easily and flexible this feature of Microsoft Excel, that is pivot tables that give you a very quick reports based on your data sets. But if you already know some functions like sum ifs, count ifs, then you want to invest the time in building that formulas. But in pivot table, I will give you a quick report with the different dimensions as we buy. Okay, all right. So here in this pivot table, you can see some totals. So we have four different products: bottles, ice cubes, soft drinks, tonics, and all four persons are selling all those four products in different years, right? And they have contributed in generating a revenue for that company. For example, if we want the totals not at the top into the some different locations, or for the time being we are required not to show the totals, what can we do that? So you have a tab on the right side that is called design tab. So for exploring these tabs, as I told you earlier, that if you are on your spreadsheet but not on your pivot table, you will not get all those tabs on the top right side. What you are required to do is make sure that you are presented inside your pivot table and go to the design tab. And now here you have a field that is called subtotal and the grand totals. You can also see that there is a column of grand total coming here, right? And also at the bottom as well. So for the time being, if you don't want to have these grand total columns, so you are not required to hide that column, there is a simple technique that you can turn off that grand totals and totals from here. So for example, I will click on grand totals and I will click on all four rows and columns. And if you want to just off any particular column or rows, you can go for these option as well, right? And for the subtotals, if you want to see the subtotals at the bottom of each of the groups, so you can click on show all subtotals at the bottom of the group. So now you can see that the instead of top and front of the particular product name, now you have a different row added, and you will find that particular sum of each of the salesperson at the bottom. So these features are already available here. You can just click, and if you want to hide, then you can select do not show subtotals. The subtotals are not showing with each of the product, and if you want to show, you can select the location as well. So this is very easy, right? But imagine if you are creating a report, not the pivot table. So you are manually required to insert a new row and then apply the sum function in each of the product manually. But in the pivot tables, it is very easy. You have to just click on the few options that is available, right? So I hope you love all these tips and tricks in today's video with respect to pivot tables, right? What else we have available here is, for example, when you click outside of any of the cell here, you will not find a field list. But whenever you come inside again in your pivot, you will find the field list here. But what happens sometimes is that if I intentionally or unintentionally click on this button, close button, so when you are inside your pivot table, you will not find field list here. So don't worry about that. If you don't find free field list here, you go to the Analyze tab and click on Field List, which is available on this ribbon on the very right side. So when you click on that, the field list will appear again, right? All right. So these are some of the features which are available with the pivot table. So there is much more to learn in this. I hope that you have explored so many things about the pivot tables. Thank you.